In this lesson, we're going to be covering stored procedures in MongoDB. So again, make sure your VirtualBox is up and running and that you are connected to your VirtualBox through terminal. All right. In SQL, we learned that there were stored functions as well as user-defined functions and stored procedures. In MongoDB, they really don't differentiate between the two. They just call them functions. But they actually, in the header, are called stored procedures. A little confusing. We're just going to go ahead and call them stored procedures, but they are defined as a function. So here is an example. We're going to create a function here called higher value, in which we pass it a and b. And I'm using that parse int to change whatever we pass in to an integer value. And then we're going to say if a is less than b, return b, else return a. So if you go ahead and copy that code and connect to Mongo, connect to the ADB database, and then run that code, you'll notice it really doesn't do anything. It actually is just declaring it locally. It's sort of like declaring a function in JavaScript. You can write it at the top of the code and then use it down below. And if I type higher value and I pass it a 2 and a 5, I get back a 5. Or I pass it a 22 and a 15, I get back the 22. It returns whatever the higher value is. Again, this is a very simple example of what a function can do. However, this function is not saved to the database. If I was to exit and then start up Mongo again, and if I type higher value, it doesn't know what's going on. The reason is I didn't save it. I just created a function on the fly, I used it, and never did anything with it. If you want to go ahead and create a function and save it, well, it looks like this. We say db.system. So again, system is the collection, and in system they have other sub-collections. We're going into the JS for JavaScript collection, because this is almost looking like a JavaScript function. And we pass it a document with the ID of higher value. Again, that's the function name, which of course the function name has to be unique. We say the value, and then we pass it the function. So we're going to accept a and b, and then the rest of the code is the same. So if I go ahead and I run this, what this is going to do is, you'll see in here, 1 upserted. It saves it. However, if I still go in here and run this, it doesn't know what to do. Just like in C#, whenever you create a library or created another file, you need to actually include it. So what we actually need to do here is tell it to go ahead and load the server scripts. So if I say load server scripts, now if I run higher, it knows what I'm talking about. So by default, when you start up your database, it doesn't load any of the JavaScript functions you have saved. We can do something like this though, db.system.js.find, and you can see there's our function. Let's add on a .pretty. And not that prettied. It separated the ID for higher value, and then the value, which is the function itself. So this is again, basic example of a function. Functions can do anything in Mongo, meaning they can have multiple inserts, updates, deletes, finds. You can do for loops, which we learned earlier inside of a function. Essentially any code, any commands you can write in Mongo that we've written so far, you can put into a function. It's just a way of encapsulating a bunch of commands together. I'm going to go ahead and give you an interesting function I created to do something which we may all need to do, which was create a random number. This is a little complex, but I want to go ahead and just show you what can be done with a function. I'm going to call it random num. I'm going to pass in the maximum number of digits the min value and the max value. Then I'm going to declare characters, chars, as a variable of 0 through 9. Random string is declared as a blank. And the string length is this max digits. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a loop, a for loop, from 0 to the string length, each time incrementing it. And then each time I'm going to pick a random number. That's what this math.random is, timed it by the chars.length, which is the length of this. And then I'm going to add it to random string over here. And then I say if the random string is less than the min value, because I want to go ahead and have a min and a max value, or the random string is greater than the max value, then we're going to actually call itself. So now we say random string equals, and I'm calling a random number again with those same values. So it may have to run a couple times to get the number. Depends what you do for your min and max values, but in the end it's going to return that random string. So we're not saving this one. I'm just going to go ahead and run it. So let's try it. I'm going to say I want a random number. I want it to be, let's do 5 digits. And I want it to be a minimum value of 200, let's do 300, and a maximum value of 3,000. And that gave us 01206, which is between the numbers, and it's 5 digits long. It forces it to be that long. And if I keep running it, it will come up with different numbers between those values. So this might be useful in some cases where you're trying to generate some random data. But remember, inside of a function, you can go ahead and put whatever you want. Again, we can put find statements, we can do update statements, we can do remove statements, we can copy databases, we can do almost anything between those two.